This is the estate of the late J. Giggles Flintstone, who has just left his entire fortune to his nephew Fred, on the condition that he spend one night in his uncle's mansion. If anything should happen to Fred, the fortune is inherited by the staff, who will also be spending the evening in the mansion. They are Creepers the butler, who, for some reason, carries a giant switchblade. Potrock the cook, who always has his enormous meat cleaver handy.
Yeah.
And Wormstone the gardener, who is never without his trusty hedge clippers. Would you feel safe staying the night in the mansion with these three?
No.
With the fortune on the line, you know, should anything untoward occur to you.
How is that a safe scenario?
It seems ill-advised.
Yeah.
And the reason we're talking about this episode is that I recently got a commission to recreate the portrait of J. Giggles Flintstone that hangs in that mansion.
Yeah.
And I thought it'd be fun to talk about one of our favorite episodes while I worked on Uncle Giggles.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
So before you launch into Flintstones nerd mode, you're using colored pencils for this.
Yes. The person who commissioned this saw our Velma and Black Knight piece, liked what we did with colored pencils and solvents.
Okay.
So I'm going to be laying down many, many layers of colored pencil here, and we'll talk about how to use the solvent when we get to that stage.
Okay.
But yeah, let's talk about this episode.
A haunted house is not a home.
Yes.
7th episode of the 5th season.
Love it.
And also the Halloween episode of that season, 1964.
And that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's the classic setup. Spend the night in a haunted house to inherit a fortune while malevolent forces plot against you.
Right.
It seems like a dangerous idea to have the staff there overnight.
Gotta say, if I were on staff, I'd consider murdering Fred Flintstone.
Exactly.
Just consider.
And Fred knows this. So he does what any decent person would do.
Yeah.
And he coerces his good friend Barney into spending the night with him.
That feels like something you would do.
Oh, I would absolutely coerce you into staying with me,
Right.
or guilt you into it.
I
Something
would.
like that. Whatever it takes.
Rather face those three creeps and their deadly weapons than deal with you in a bad mood.
That's a good call. But here's the thing. I don't think I would have to guilt you into staying. I know you.
Of course I wouldn't let you stay alone.
And I know you would stay because you're just really greedy.
I was going to stay at a friendship.
No,
but
you
no.
want a piece. You want a piece.
Oh,
Everybody
really?
wants a piece, Michelle. And honestly,
Really?
I'm rethinking having you stay because that is just another knife at my throat.
I don't know
in
why.
the dead of night.
I try to do
You're
good
all
things for you.
snakes, is what it is. Snakes in the grass, looking to get your hands on my millions.
Oh my.
All right, let's talk about this drawing.
Okay.
So you can see the many layers of pencil have left a nice mix of colors, but a very rough texture.
You really see it up close.
Yeah, but that's okay because you need all of those layers of pigment to make this work.
Okay.
And the way you make it work is to use a solvent like this Gamsol to essentially dissolve the wax that carries the pigments and allow the pigments to then blend into one another on the paper.
Okay, so what kind of paper is this?
I'm using hot press watercolor paper, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
First, you want a smooth paper to help you get a smooth texture. This may not be the smoothest paper. Bristol board feels smoother to me, but this has a pretty fine tooth on it. And more importantly, this is a heavy cotton paper that will hold up to all the solvent I'll be brushing on.
So it won't warp and buckle.
Exactly.
Okay, I get it. And it's really neat. You
Yeah.
can see the color smoothing out. Okay, so you want a smooth paper, but also a durable paper.
Yeah.
Anything else? What about the solvent? Just slap it on?
No, you don't just slap it on.
Okay.
Because if you use too much, it'll oversaturate the paper, and you may get kind of like an oily looking stain.
Oh, yeah, you don't
And
want
your colors may bleed. But you need enough solvent to dissolve the pigments. So
Okay.
it's all about finding that sweet spot and putting just enough on the brush before you apply it. Now, back at the mansion, to add to the feeling of jeopardy, there is, over the course of the evening, the sound of ghostly cackling throughout the mansion. And all of this chaos is being perpetrated under the watchful eye of the portrait of dear departed Uncle Giggles.
And the eyes in the portrait seem to move and follow Fred and Barty around the house.
An old school mystery thriller trope.
Love it. Why did Uncle Giggles wear a barrel? He was rich, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was very wealthy.
Yeah.
But he was also he was kind of a...
He was eccentric.
He was a kook, but he was very fashion-forward.
Yeah.
Now, let me show you another trick with the solvent.
Okay.
I'm digging in deep into the paper with my white-colored pencil. I wanted some bright white highlights in the barrel to denote the wood grain.
Nice.
This creates a little divot full of color that the other pencils can't really get into. So you layer on your color, and once you brush on the solvent and everything starts blending, those white highlights will pop right out.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's a good way to get the lighter details to stand out.
Yep.
Talk about fashion forward. The tie without a shirt is a bold choice.
Right? Also, I misread the ornament on the tie, and at first I drew it as a flower, like an idiot, but it's actually a diamond stick pin.
Okay.
And I fixed that later on. Okay, so at this point, the night is in full swing. The storm is still raging outside, and there have been a lot of disturbing goings-on at the mansion. To-wit, Creepers has served Fred and Barney alphabet soup that spells out the word beware. They have been chased by someone in a suit of armor wielding a giant club.
Wormstone has lunged at them countless times, snapping his clippers like a maniac.
Yes, and Potluck has nearly chopped Fred and Barney in two with his giant cleaver at least a couple of times.
I feel like we've passed the point of there's a perfectly reasonable explanation for this.
The staff is clearly out for blood. There's a lot of money on the line.
Yeah.
And through it all, this portrait hangs and watches.
Yes.
The trick of this commission, by the way,
Yeah.
is that I wanted to avoid inks. I wanted to keep it colored pencil, at least on the figure. But Hanna-Barbera has this thing, this
I was going to
design-
say, Hanna-Barbera designs have those thick, heavy lines around the figures.
Yeah, so, and I didn't want to go thick with colored pencil. So I'm hoping that just going intense,
Okay.
like a little darker than I normally would with the outline, I'm hoping that works. So I decided to finish up the background with watercolor.
Kind of mimicking the sponge looks of the cartoon backgrounds.
Right. The artists who worked on these cartoons used all kinds of things to dab on texture.
Yeah.
I'm not doing the same thing, but I do know that sometimes they used crumpled up paper towels to dab on texture or sponges. So, you know, we'll see how it turns out. Get ready, here come some spoilers.
60-year-old spoilers.
Yeah, well, they had their chance.
Right.
So Fred and Barney make it through the night alive. Wilma and Betty come to pick them up, and Fred is thrilled.
Yeah.
Because he's rich. The staff is nowhere in sight.
But you can still hear the chilling laughter echoing through the house.
Yeah, and that's when it is revealed that the portrait of J. Giggles Flintstone is not a portrait at all.
Right.
But is, in fact, Fred's nutty Uncle Giggles, the kook, standing perfectly motionless throughout the night, creeping on his nephew.
The whole thing was a gag.
The whole thing was a joke.
The staff was only pretending to try to murder them.
Yeah, because Uncle Giggles wanted to see if Fred had a sense of humor.
Because that would determine whether or not Fred would get any inheritance someday when Giggles did actually pass.
I'll tell you, if my rich uncle pulled that with me...
Yeah?
Well, you know what? I don't want to say. I got to find out whether or not I'm in the will before I open my big mouth.
Okay.
All right, let's look at this final piece.
So there he is.
There he is.
The not-so-late Uncle J. Giggles Flintstone.
And no, it's not a weird little man standing on our workbench.
No.
It's the actual commission.
I like it.
The client liked it too.
Good.
And I had fun with it.
Good. So does Fred not get any money?
What do you mean?
Just, does he get any money? Because he spent the
Why
night
are
in
you
the
so
mansion.
focused on the money still? This is what I was talking about earlier. Greedy.
What?
A greedy little snake in the grass. All the riches that I offer you in this rat-infested, flood-damaged studio, and it's not enough. It's never enough. You know what? If I put you in my will, I'm definitely making you spend the night in a haunted house.
Oh, no.
I am.